Have you ever heard someone say that if you're ever stopped for a DUI, you should never blow into the breathalyzer? Well, here in Florida, the answer to that question has changed dramatically with a new law that goes into effect tonight. In the most recent Florida legislature session, the legislature passed a law called Trenton's Law that goes into effect October 1st, so tonight at midnight, that changes the game for DUIs. Quite frankly, what we have seen over time is that every 10 or 15 years, the legislature changes the law in some way that makes prosecution for DUIs more severe. So how did we see this happen over time? Well, back in the 1980s, the legal limit was a 0.15, and they reduced it in the 1980s to a 0.10. Then we fast forward to 1994, the legal limit reduced from 0.10 down to 0.08. In 2002, the legislature added a requirement that for some DUI cases, there'd be a requirement that the person have an ignition interlock device installed in their vehicle as part of the sentence. In 2008, the enhancement level changed from 0.20 down to 0.15. And then here we are in 2025, and we have Trenton's Law. So what do you need to know about Trenton's Law? The idea behind Trenton's Law and who the law is named after is very significant, and it makes a lot of sense. There was this young man, he was a college football player in Florida that was killed by a drunk driver. The drunk driver in that case had a previous conviction for vehicular homicide and had been to prison for vehicular homicide. When he got this prosecution for killing this young man, the judge sentenced him to 12 years, and there was widespread frustration that the penalties could not be enhanced even though he was a repeat offender. So part of what Trenton's Law does is it allows for an enhancement up to a first-degree felony, doubling the potential penalties for someone charged with DUI, manslaughter, or vehicular homicide, where they have a previous conviction for those offenses. Now that makes a ton of sense, right? If it's not your first rodeo in killing someone with your car when you're impaired or driving extremely recklessly, it makes sense that there would be enhanced penalties for the second time. But the other part of Trenton's Law, which is what I'm not a real big fan of, and what I think really has nothing to do with the death of this young man. This Trenton's Law, the other part of the law, makes it a second-degree misdemeanor if you refuse to submit to a breath test, even if it's your first offense. So what does that mean? It means that we could have people that are first offenders, never been in any trouble in their life, who are sentenced to up to 60 days in jail for refusing to submit to a breath test. So beginning this evening, if you get arrested for DUI and you're asked to do a breath test, not only do you face the same driver's license consequences that you've always faced, losing your license for a year if it's your first refusal or 18 months if it's a second refusal, a person is now facing an additional second-degree misdemeanor charge for refusal to submit to testing. And that's what you need to know about Trenton's Law.